Hello, friends. Crystal here, your Vibrant BF, and welcome back to Chakra 3 of our chakra series and the nervous system and the beautiful dance they make. So, our third chakra is the fire chakra, is one way to think about it. In Sanskrit, it is Pura, which means lustrous gem. And remember, I have my big whiteboard here that I am referring to all this information to share with you. So it is also considered the navel chakra because it starts right at the end of the sternum to the navel. Its color is yellow. And think about fire, think about the sun is one of the planets as well as Mars. It has a 10 petal lotus. Remember, each of the lotuses had different number of petals. One of the reasons that they claim that it could be 10 petals is to represent our 10 fingers that reach out, extend out into the world, because this is our get up and go chakra. This is our power center, our wheel, our self esteem, our action, transformation. One of the rights is I can or to act. And when we think about it being like the navel chakra, the navel is basically the prenatal portal for all of the energy, right? That's how the baby is fed through the navel center. So it's so exciting because we are moving through these chakras. We have gone from earth to water, and now we are in the fire element. So when we think about earth and water, those are both passive elements. Earth and water, they move downward. They're on the path of least resistance, when fire is the absolute opposite. It is moving upward into new dimensions. Fire ignites our consciousness. It's so exciting because the fire is what's going to start moving us up to all the other chakras. So this is another way of thinking about it, is that it's helping to steer us away from the path of least resistance, addictive behaviors or habits, and moving into the new, and burning away anything that doesn't serve us or anything that's out of alignment. And when we think about fires, the hardest part of a fire is getting it started. But once it's started, it burns a lot easier. And we can look at the sun, which is one of the planets that represents this third chakra, as being the macrocosm of this lustrous gem, or the Manipura. Now, our chakras, we've talked about before, they're basically all interdependent facets of the unified field of consciousness. They don't operate separately. We can think about them separately intellectually, but they're all feeding off of each other, right? The spinning disc, because remember, chakra in Sanskrit is disc or wheel. And with the earth, water, fire element, it's considered the trinity of the fundamental principles. It's regulating our physical bodies and matter. Now, when we think about the fire as well, we are dealing with the solar plexus. It deals with the adrenals. Now, the adrenals are these triangle shaped organs that sit right on top of the kidneys. And it deals with the endocrine system, which is basically our body's, how we deals with stress. So when it's out of alignment, it's our digestion, and we have chronic fatigue. It can lead to hypertension, diabetes, things like that. And you remember, this has been coming up quite a bit. The nervous system, the stress, dealing with different things like our breath, our heart rate that we can't consciously control, a metabolism, immune system, blood pressure, things like that, that are our bodies telling us we're not in alignment, we're out of balance, things aren't moving the way they should. These are some of the ways that it's going to show it being out of alignment. Now, I want to think about the fire and how fire takes fuel. But when we are operating in closed system, which another version of that would be when we're like withdrawing ourselves from life, right? We're kind of despondent. We're kind of going through the flow, running on autopilot. Our expression turns on itself. So that's where we start leaning into anger, or start stirring up self-criticism, which wears us down even more, makes us kind of close in even more and withdraw even more and kind of get stuck in these loops and patterns. And then it starts to burn up all the fuel, right? Because it's in a closed system. It doesn't have air, breath to breathe, which is actually the fourth chakra that we'll be moving into next. Now, to break this cycle of like kind of going in and having this anger and this self criticism, we have to connect back to self. And because this is part of the trinity of earth and water, we think about the first two chakras. So the first chakra being earth, our body, the ground, and then the second chakra being our passions and our pleasures. We're giving ourselves space to make mistakes and to breathe and to explore. Because remember, breath, expansion, and air helps to move fire. So when we're thinking about us being here on Earth School, and we talked about it before, of how Earth School is the hardest school. It is the densest planet, and those of us who have experienced Earth School knows that life can be very challenging. And learning as we grow up, we are basically developing and learning how they're maintaining this power structures within our cultures and educational systems. So, for example, we're basically taught from very early on that how to teach us to be powerlessless. And I say that in the sense of being submissive and submitting to the constructs that may be, as a way of like social cooperation. And so somebody who may be more of a free thinker or creative thinker is kind of seen as deviant and ostracized from society, while conformity and fitting within these boxes is kind of reinforced. And it starts with our parents, right? We want well behaved, almost docile children. Stay within the lines, don't do that, stay here. But this type of thinking, the submission, dampens and cripples our sense of power, our will, and self esteem. So we, as parents, will start off by, no, you can't do that. That's good. That's bad. And I'm not saying there isn't need for, of course, some kind of structure and guidance. However, the constructs that especially live on here, planet Earth, are limiting beliefs. They are fear based, and we really have to learn how to hold our power, even in the midst of developing and maintaining and trying to move through this world, right? Move through Earth School. So our parents, it starts with our parents, and then we go to school and we got to listen to them, and then clergy, and then our bosses, and then the military and government officials, and et cetera, et cetera. And again, we do need social cooperation. We do need laws and regulations, and we can't run red lights, and we don't steal and things like that. But unfortunately, most of them are taught to fit within this box, to fit within this structure. And if you don't match up to one of these boxes, something's wrong with you, which starts to break down our self-esteem and our will and our power and things like that. And many of us lose this connection with our will, with our power, with learning how to lead, to leaning into ourselves. And it starts to lend us over to becoming powerlessness, having powerlessness over drugs or alcohol or any other destructive behavior, because we don't have power. We don't have our own autonomy that we have learned to listen and lean deeper into, because we're actually rewarded for being good and being like everyone else and following the status quo. Now, the one of the things we also want to look at is another construct that is really big on this is submissive paradigm, and how when the power is placed outside of ourselves, right? So we are looking at maybe religious teachers. Religion's a big one that teaches us to look for directions outside of ourselves, to follow different indoctrinations and whatever. And of course, like anything, last week we talked about the dualities with the second chakra, the water, and how it's ebbing and flowing. And so there are times and places to have instructors and teachers and guidance, great. But when we have completely lost our own kind of North Star and everything has to come from an external validation or external teaching, that leaves us feeling very empty inside, because we're not operating within our own power source. We're not operating in our own chakras. We're not operating in our fire, in our action, in our own transformation. So we want to first start looking at and re-examining what the word power means. Now, there are different types of power. We have the domination power, and that's power over. And this is when it takes constant effort. We have to be extremely vigilant. It's a forced submission. It's intimidation. It's a lot that we see going on in the US right now with the deployment of the National Guard and ICE agents, and the surveillance has to kick up. Everything has to come very dominant, heavy, and very control led. And this is power over, right? But the other type of power is what's called power within, and this is an integration. This is where we are connecting with the forces of life. So this is where unity and wholeness actually have more of the say, and there's strength and solidarity of a group with the ability to combine and coordinate. So when we can come together with like-mindedness and raise the collective consciousness and to band together and have, for example, these marches and parades for Palestine or Congo or whatever we're believing to stand up for as a group in power and agreement and harmony and unity, that is having the power within. We're searching and saying, not on my watch will we watch this genocide play out, versus the power over where they're dominating and saying you don't have freedom of speech, they're shutting down the presses, things like that. So it's extremely different. So to have power, we need to be conscious and to perceive new information, to assimilate and receive new information. And assimilate means to take in, to adjust. And we looked at this with the second chakra as well, with understanding the choices and the dualities and the ebbs and the flows of our actions. And this is what's going to give us the maximum impact and efforts. By learning something new, by taking in, by being curious, will allow us to really learn to lean into our power and the power within, and to not just give it away, and to not live in this space of basically submission and docile and status quo and constructs that necessarily aren't for our highest good, but more for the social, to keep law and order in a matter of speaking. So let's talk about wheel. Wheel is consciously controlled change, right? Our willpower. When we understand that everything we see around us is from our will, we have created our reality from our will. And we think about the second chakra again and how it has the dualities and the choices. So depending on the choices that we make, we create our future. So we have to understand that we have to release this victimhood. Now, this is not by any means to take away from situations and circumstances that really do have us as the victim. There are situations where we are the victim. However, we also get to decide what we do from that point on. That does not have to be our whole story. So say if someone is trafficked, like that, they were children, they were victims of trafficking. That doesn't have to be their whole story. They can choose to use that to educate, to help other people get out of the systems, different things like that. And it's to also understand that life has life things, and it's hard, and it could be unfair. It's greatly unjust. This world is greatly unfair. However, we get to decide what we do with those actions, because it's E plus R equal O. The event plus our reaction equal the outcome. So though we don't always get to choose what happens to us, we get to choose what we do with that. And for each challenge that comes up, that happens, some kind of unjust thing or unfair thing, or whatever unpleasant experience, it gives us an opportunity to awaken our will, our power, our fire, our desire to do more, to change, to shift, and to lean into our own power more, our own self-esteem, our autonomy. That is what this chakra is all about. And to basically live in our highest potential, which I always talk about, our highest timeline. And when we were talking about earlier about how the fire is moving upward and basically allows us to connect to and create new dimensions. It burns things that aren't of our good, of our highest alignment, and makes way for new awakenings, timelines, dimensions. So we get to also remove ourselves from the victimhood, and then we get to replace the have tos with the get tos, and we get to choose. Like, I don't have to do the dishes. I'm choosing to do the dishes because I enjoy having a clean kitchen. I don't have to go over to this party, but I'm choosing to go to this party because I enjoy the company and the friends that I have. And these are all the choices. So when we get to really examine who is saying we are doing this, why do we think we have to do this? But when we really get to choose, we get to choose. And then if we ask ourselves, why am I choosing this? We have to get honest and say, am I choosing this because I'm scared? Am I people pleasing? Am I trying to look good? Is this for my ego? Is this a trauma response? Whatever the case may be, we have to decide and understand for our own selves, to be honest with ourselves. If we can't be honest with anybody else, we have to be honest with ourselves, because that is where our true healing comes. That's where our growth comes from. That's where our expansion comes from. That's where we are learning to live better and deeper in our autonomy, in our will, and our power. So, be daring with your true self, right? So it's not always easy to go against the crowd, to stand up for things you believe in, to go against the grain, to break out of the status quo. We face being ostracized. We face rejection, maybe abandonment. All these things as humans, we're taught we don't want these things, we don't like these things. And though they don't always feel good, sometimes it's for our better good. And we get to release for an increase. We get to release misaligned relationships so that we can find people that really do understand us, that really do want to be on our team. Jobs, places, things, whatever it may be, when we learn to work that muscle, because it's a muscle of leaning in and trying and learning and doing and allowing and being curious, what we talked about before, assimilating and taking in new information and moving accordingly, it helps us to start to operate in our power and to have that alignment, that harmony with our third chakra. So I want you to look around for a moment. Just look around your space or close your eyes and think about your life. And I want you to think about the job you have, the clothes you wear, the place you live, the friends you keep, the things you do, and understand that you are in control of all of it and that you are creating that reality. Whatever it is, it's your will that has created this. And when we do this and we can say, I'm really happy with the environments that I'm placing myself in, the people that I have in my life, great. But if there's misalignment, resistance, whatever it may be, we also have the will to change that. So, okay. So yes, let's talk about how alignment of our will and our power, how to keep ourselves in these alignments, how to keep this third chakra moving appropriately. So the first thing is grounded, and being curious. So we have to get curious on what is our true selves, because from the moment we come into Earth School, we're basically indoctrinated subconsciously. We're in our hypnosis state for the first 7 years of our life, of all the things to do that are good, that are bad, that are with us, for us, depending on your race, gender, class, ethnicity, blah, 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 blah. And so you get to get curious and get to plug into your true self. And when we do this, you get to kind of create this very liberating current within yourself, right? You don't have to stay in the shoulds, because it could sound like, I should have, I have to, this is that internal dialogue. When it's like, I really don't. I get to choose how I show up. I get to choose what feels most aligned. I get to lean into my highest timeline, even if it means going against the status quo or being ostracized or whatever, because I guarantee you there are people that get you. So then the second thing is to get clear on what you want. Like, what is that? What is your desires, your pleasures? Who are you? What lights you up? What is your talent, your joys, whatever that may be? What is it that you want? And then removing yourself from anything that's not aligned with that. So with that, desires may keep us trapped, because remember, the second chakra, pleasure center, it's a very tricky center, because people can become overindulgent in the pleasures, whatever that may be. So if we can get really clear on what we want and why we want that, it will keep us from getting trapped or stuck in those lower chakras. So if you're feeling deprived or unloved or overworked, these are ways that makes it easier to manipulate you. And I go back to the US and how many people don't have basics like food, clothing, and shelter. And, it's always ranted about being the greatest country when there's so much sickness and sadness globally, but especially in a place that's supposed to be such a rich nation. And so people feel very overwhelmed, worked, and unloved and abandoned and whatever. So it's easier to manipulate those minds because they're not getting their basic needs. So when it's flourishing, when you are clear on what you want and you know why you want it, and it feels in alignment and it's harmony with your highest self, you are going to feel more relaxed and happy and in tune with yourself. Now, our will and desire aren't always in harmony with one another. For example, maybe you have a desire to have cake, right? That's something that really makes you happy. But your will is to be healthy and to lose weight. That does not, that's an incongruence, right? So we have to understand there's nuances and duality with that, but truly always looking at what is the higher purpose here. And with that, understanding what's the difference between will and whim. So our will is more of a long-term purpose, right? Like our bigger goal, our true identity, our higher selves. And then the whims are momentary. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with enjoying a cake or whatever it is, like if it's a glass of champagne or whatever, but understanding if there is a disconnection or misalignment, leaning more into the wheel, the long-term purpose, higher self, versus maybe the desire that can sometimes get you caught up if you start to overindulge in those spaces. And another way is to understand that in this life, there's always paths or different choices. And it's hard. Life is hard, but you get to choose your hard. It's hard to possibly wake up at 4 a.m. in the morning to work out if that's what you do. But it's also hard to have your body not working at its highest potential and being very sickly and in the hospital. Those are both hard, but you get to choose your hard. And when there is alignment and coherency, there's going to be a flow to let you understand that you are in your will and it's not a whim. So, some things to look for if you have a high self esteem: you are confident, assertive, proactive, disciplined. You're excited about life. Essentially, you get up and you're thinking, what next? What do I get to do? How do I get to show up? How do I serve? How can I make an impact today? Now, if you have lower self esteem, you are usually ruminating. There's lots of doubts. There's self criticisms, blaming. And that creates you to lose momentum, right? We talked about the fire, and once it gets started, it's easy to maintain and keep it burning as long as there's airflow and you're not closing off. But if you're constantly checking to make sure, is it really enough flame? Is it really, if you keep moving the stones and the sticks and the embers, it's going to most likely burn out and it's going to lose that momentum, and you're going to keep looping through, starting the fire, messing it up, starting again, messing up, versus keeping that fire going, moving, aligning, keeping the light, keeping the warmth, things like that. So another thing to know about this third chakra, the antithesis of it, the opposite, is shame. And remember, shame is the lowest vibration on the spectrum. It's at about 20. So anything above 700 is like considered enlightenment. Love is around 500, but shame is 20. It's the lowest vibration, and that's the antithesis of our fire chakra. Right, so another thing, number 3, is to understand knowledge is power. And powerlessness can come from ignorance, when you don't know your options, when you don't know what to do. So increasing your awareness increases your power. And one way to help do this and to learn more about yourself and what to do and where to lean in is meditation and tapping into your deepest self, your truest self, your highest alignment. Now, to understand ways to go deeper into developing this third chakra, let's go through some of these. So do something different. So if you're feeling really sluggish, move. If you're really hyperactive, be still. Break boring, repetitive cycles. One of the things that you can do, something really simple, is brushing your teeth with your less dominant hand. Power is seldom developed with clinging to security and safety. You usually have to break out of that to awaken and move more quickly into deeper power. Avoid invalidation. This was a really big one. Criticism from those who really don't understand you or the circumstances. Or if people are extra sensitive, you really want to have people around you that will provide more safety in that sense, but understanding that not everybody is for you. Not everyone can handle your goals, your dreams, your desires, your will, things like that. And there's a quote by Albert Einstein that says, new ideas meet their greatest opposition from those who misunderstand them. Okay. Then we've got wiring of energy circuits, completing that allow to flow. So, for example, when we are processing through emotions or heavy things or whatever, it's important to complete that cycle and to move through it all the way. Grounding is a great way to connect those circuits, to think past this moment so that it's not fragmented and broken up. So if you're really frustrated or angry and you just push it down and you don't deal with it, it's not dealt with. It's going to come back, and it's going to come back probably at the most non-opportunist time. So understanding the importance of having different emotions flow all the way through, processing through what it is you're going through, giving yourself space to actually understand what it is you need. Let's move on to number 4, which is effort and resistance. We really have to understand why we're doing the things we're doing. So if we're applying reasonable effort and it's not flowing harmoniously, there's a lot of resistance. We need to stop and ask, one, am I in alignment? Why am I so attached to this? Is this really within my wheel? Because when we're using a lot of effort, that's usually, and there's no manifestation, there's nothing coming from it, it could be resistance. Now, sometimes the resistance can come from fear. So we need to ask ourselves, and what am I afraid of? And clearing that out. And that may pick up the momentum and create more harmony. But we want to get really clear on the effort and if there's resistance and what we're doing as we're moving through and deepening our development for our chakra, third chakra. Now, 4A or 5 is breaking the attachments. So when the energy isn't manifesting, it's hung up on something. So we have to understand that sometimes it may not just be for us, maybe that season or at all, or there's a shift or whatever, but understand this simple phrase, release for increase. We're moving on number 6, releasing blocked anger. Though to unblock the third chakra is by releasing blocked anger. So blocked anger is usually the reason why there's a blockage in the third chakra. And number 7 is to increase our information. We talked about it before. Knowledge is power. So we can lean into learning more and understanding where we can do more. And then number 8 is love, which is our fourth chakra, because love is a unifying force. It inspires and gives strength to help us to keep going. Remember, our third chakra is our get up and go, our action. And then we have number 9, which is laughter, which is perfect because I love to laugh. It's one of my favorite things to do. We have to stop taking things so freaking serious. Like, life is not this serious. We need to go back to joy, choosing joy, showing up, laughing at whatever we're doing, and keep it moving. And the 10th way to help to deepen our third chakra alignment is to take care of self, because if we don't do it, no one will. And we are our greatest carers and givers because we know what we need. Especially for women, we need to trust and lean into our body and know what it is that's going to help us feel loved and supported. Now, some exercises we can do as well is breath of fire, jogging, stomach crunchers. You can look at some of these. Wood chopper, a bow pose, a pike pose, belly push. Again, you can Google these. Making the sun, power walks, and what's called a laughing circle. These are just some exercises to help strengthen this navel chakra. This was a really in-depth, intense chakra indeed. And I thought it's so ironic that the timing of this and the timing of everything going on in the world with people feeling defeated and then some people feeling very empowered and understanding the power within versus the power over, going into the age of Aquarius, all the things. But I just want to encourage you that we are the creators of our reality. We are co-creating with this universe. And what we focus on, we expand. What we believe, we create. And when you are living in your truth and your alignment and you're exercising these muscles and you're leaning into your true self, your true will, and you have good self-esteem and you're surrounded by good people and you're encouraged and you're taking care of yourself and you're doing all these things, your third chakra, this FIRE chakra, is going to have you expanding into new timelines, into higher dimensions, into your full willpower, your full self, your full autonomy to create beautiful action and impact for this world. Thank you so much for joining, and I will see you next week for Chakra 4, the heart chakra.